A brand new update to the restriction list for Vanguard, and we've got a brand new perfect performance from Bermuda Triangle.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we've got quite some new, nice, spicy updates, as not only do we have a new restriction list update, as well as some new promo cards, and a brand new VR for Bermuda Triangle. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the restriction list itself, because the restriction list is quite interesting, at least a new update to it, and to some extent I was correct, because in my prediction video I made two big claims. Either certain specific cards would get hit, or we would see certain specific cards get off the ban list. Now, we didn't see any new restrictions, but every single card that I talked about that should get off the restriction list for a specific reason did get off the restriction list. Because starting from December the 1st for the English format, Dorian, Angerblader, and Shiryuki will all go to 4 copies per deck. So we got the unrestriction of these specific grade 3 units, and this could have some impact for the game itself. Now, I won't get into much detail in this specific video about the restriction list itself. If you want to have an idea what my opinion is about the fact that these cards are unrestricted, then you could watch my prediction video, as I already explained in that video why I think they should get unrestricted because of certain reasons, either in the clans themselves with the latest support or with the whole evolution of the meta itself. And you can get an idea what my opinion is about the restriction list update that we've got today. That said, I will get into more detail in a separate video that I will do tomorrow, where I'll go over these specific restrictions that now are lifted off the ban list, and what I think about what they might mean for the clan with the whole setting that we now see today, but also with the fact that we didn't see other restriction added on top of the list. So I will go over my thoughts and my concerns, or maybe why they did the reason for it and why that could be a potential good thing. I will go into much more detail in that specific video. So if you're interested in that, then definitely hit the subscribe button and the bell button to be updated and uploaded for once that video will go live tomorrow. And while you're at it down there, then also why not hit the like button to support your guy. Now with that said, let's dive into the new cards that were revealed today, because we also got some new promo cards and a new VR for Bermuda Triangle. And these promo cards are interesting to some extent, because one of those promo cards that we saw is this grid 1 Scarlet Vivid Quale. And Quale has the abilities Auto Vanguard the Regular Circle. When placed, you may soul charge 1. Very simple, it's just a soul charge engine. This could work in certain builds, maybe Coral for example. This could maybe be a tech option for the new Melody build that we've seen that wants to get multiple cards into the soul. This could be a nice grade 1 for that engine. But it also has a very generic skill, which is auto. When rode upon, you may call this card to the regular circle. We've seen both skills time and time again via many different units and in many different clans, so it's not really special. And therefore, it's a pretty good promo to have something generic like this. But there is something interesting to this card, except that it could be a nice tech card for certain engines. Because of her second skill, that when rode upon calls herself to the regular circle, makes her a pretty nice target or in combination play with the new top idol Aqua. Because Aqua, once you place her onto the field, either by riding or calling, you can bounce the card back to the hand to get more value and to basically get the cycle for free. But sometimes in the early game, you don't really want to call anything, and if you do call, your opponent could potentially just snipe them away. With a grade 1 like this, you basically have best of both worlds, because you can ride this grade 1, then next turn ride the Aqua on top of her, call her out, get the soul because the when place activates, and you already gain soul by riding her, then immediately activate the top idol Aqua skill to bounce her back from hand, get the cycle, and then maybe call her again to get another soul. These two cards together, this little engine, can give you a lot of soul in certain scenarios. So if you have a new engine or new deck that relies on soul heavy skills or want to have specific cards in the soul, then this duo play could be a nice tech option for those decks. So an interesting promo nonetheless. Now the second promo that we've got, surprisingly, isn't a Bermuda Triangle card, as we have a brand new Witch card for Oracle Think Tank. As we have Seablue Witch NiNi. And NiNi has 2 skills, and her first skill is continues from soul. During your main phase, if you have a Vanguard with Witch in its card name, this card gets grade +1. This might sound weird, as Oracle Think Tank doesn't really care about the specific grades in the soul. If this was with Genesis, then it made more sense, but in a Witch archetype, this actually makes a lot of sense, as the Witch archetypes has the boss unit Scarlet's Witch Coco. And Coco wants to ride on top of a grade 2 to get 2 free draws, but you also actually want to have a grade 3 in the soul, so you can use her skill to generate a lot of protect markers by exchanging your Witch cards into protect units. The problem with Coco is that she's way too slow, and we also have another grade 3 which you want to go afterwards, which can turn those protect markers into actual physical power. Now, thanks to NiNi here, you can speed that all up by 1 turn, as you can just ride Coco on top of her, you get the extra draw because you rode on top of a grade 2, but you now also have a grade 3 in the soul because she turns to a grade 3, meaning you can use the Soul Blast, a grade 3 active ability of Coco a turn earlier. But you don't even have to ride this card because of her second ability, which is Act on Rearguard Circle, calls put this unit into your soul, look at the free cards from the top of your deck, and put them on the top of your deck in any order. So a little bit deck manipulation, but the important part is that now you can put her into the soul without any problem, even if you misrode her, so you can still set up for your Coco turn on your turn free play, which is pretty good. But another thing this might open up is a turbo Victorious Deer play. Because if you have multiple copies of NiNi in the early game, you can shove them all in the soul, and because you're playing a Witch deck or Witch heavy deck, all those NiNi grade 2s are actually grade 3s, so you could Soul Blast them with the Victorious Deer to just pump up a lot of power and stack for crits very early on. I'm not saying that this deck is going to be powerful or anything. It's a nice tech option and might or might not actually see some play in Japan. And who knows, we might or might not get this promo because it's still a promo. Now, with those 2 promos behind us, let's go into the main star of today's video. And that is, of course, the brand new Bermuda Triangle VR, which is the return of Perfect Performance Ange, or Ange, whatever your pick is. And Ange has the ability Auto Vanguard Circle. When it attacks a Vanguard, cost counterblast 1, choose any number of normal units on any player's rearguard circle and return them to hand. Activate all of the effects below according to the number of cards returned. 2 or more, this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. 3 or more, get an imaginary gift Force. 4 or more, search your deck for up to 1 unit card, call to the rearguard circle, and shuffle your deck. So there's a couple of things that are happening with Ange here. You have your bounce effect, so you can basically return everything to the field, so you can protect stuff from your opponent's side if they have control option, but at the same time you can slam cards down, be aggressive, but still have the defensive option next turn because they're all saving your hand. This also allows your Vanguard to gain a little bit more power, so she becomes a 23k attacker. This makes sense as there's a possibility that you're bouncing back your booster, thus negating the power of the boost itself, so at the very least your Vanguard does hit. And now that she also gains force markers, means that you can accelerate force marker a little bit. This is somewhat that we've seen in other clans, and you can therefore get 2 force markers a turn if you can keep rewriting another Ange every single turn. And then, of course, this last bit of the skill, being able to search out any card from your deck, opens up that you can multi-attack. You can at least get 4 attacks every single turn. Now, anybody that is somewhat familiar with Bermuda Triangle immediately knows how far you can take this, because a card like Lisa Lot exists, so you can search out Lisa Lot, use her ability to then call the top card of your deck, and actually have 2 cards standing in the front row. That said, you have no control over what that card is. You could call a grade 3 or a very powerful grade 2 beater, but you could also call a trigger. That is where the imaginary gift Force comes into play that you can generate. You can at least spread them out on your front row circles, thus increasing the power of those multi-attack attacks a little bit, because if you put the normal force mark on the right or left circle and the one that you generate on the other side, at least your second wave of attack will be of a maybe beatable number if your opponent doesn't get the defensive triggers. And in the worst case scenario, if it's a trigger, you can maybe just put it besides the Lisa Lot to make a column. You can also try to opt for that. Now, of course, this is just one part of Ange ability, because the fact that you can bounce anything back means that you have a bit of control. Because in the scenario that I just explained with the multi-attack things, we go with the scenario that we're bouncing our entire board back to the hand. That might not always need to be necessary, because we can choose any player's rearguard circle and then bounce back those new normal units on top of that. So, in some scenarios, we could attack with our front row units, leave her booster standing, and then bounce our front row circles back to her hand. And then some of our opponent's units, of course, don't pick cards that have on-place effects, if you want to be smart about it. And because you then still fulfill the condition, you can superior call the Leave-a-Lot, or whatever you want to call, and then maybe to the other column for the Leave-a-Lot call, and still have the boosters behind it to then make significant numbers even if your opponent gets defensive triggers. Now on surface, when you look at a card like this, it doesn't really sound that amazing or insane of what we've seen so far. Yes, she's very generic and she can generate 4 attacks, maybe 5 attacks, but she doesn't really skill as insanely as we've seen with the other cards, and she doesn't feel as explosive as the other cards. But right in that sentence that I just said, that is where I think Ange's real power lies. She is generic. She can be put in whatever strategy you want to play, and she will work there. Because she can do something that works in any deck. She can generate multi-tech, she gains power, she can generate force markers, which is pretty good. To give more examples what we can do, we can run a pure value engine with Ange. Because we bounce back our entire board, we can rely on cards like Special Message Quale, Leave-a-Lot, also the new Top Idol Aqua. All these cards that have these really good on-place effects, we can keep reusing them turn after turn after turn, because we can just bounce them back every single turn, thus gaining more value over the course of the entire game. That's one way that we can look at Ange. Another way that we can look at Ange is by combining her with other main strategies, because a lot of the new strategies in Bermuda Triangle rely on one specific grade 3. Now that said, we can use Ange as a backup bright target in the case that we can't get to that engine. But if we want to take things a bit more to the utmost extreme, we could even look at the previous VR that was released, the new Melody boss unit, and take her out of the Melody equation and put Ange in her place. Now that might sound weird, because Ange doesn't have any Melody skills and doesn't interact with anything. The good part about Melody is that everything works as a rearguard unit itself. They don't have to be your Vanguard circle. So all your Sonatas and Caros and Finas and whatever can just be your rearguard units. Now if we combine that with Ange multi-attack potential and the fact that she can generate an extra force marker in this very first grade 3 turn, we can then look at a Melody board that can generate Melody numbers with all attacks coming with double critical if we just go for force 2. Because we can generate our Sonata Caro board and then have Ange as a Vanguard. We go for force 2, put it onto the side column. We attack with that column for some massive number. Then we attack with the Vanguard. That's the only one that doesn't have double critical. Then we bounce back at least one of our units, and ideally as many of our opponent's units, so we can keep our board where it is. Then superior call a Sonata or a Caro, whatever, from our deck onto the circle that we just opened up, and then we generate that extra force marker onto the other column, and then we can basically generate 3 Melody columns that all comes with double critical, and we still have the Ange power column in between, and while we're doing that, we are bouncing back more Melody cards turn after turn into our hand, thus also preventing some field control disruption play against us, because if they do destroy our board, we have some Melody cards that are bounced back to our hand, so we can still repopulate the board afterwards. So there are some interesting takes that we can take the Ange deck into if we take all things in consideration what Bermuda Triangle has to offer. And we potentially haven't even seen her full power, because we have some reveals left. If we get cards that interact with her bounce mechanic itself, which Bermuda had in the past, and we are seeing more and more cards that bounce cards themselves, like Aqua and now Ange, I wouldn't be surprised if we then see cards that do something on the moment they are being bounced. And if that happens, then Ange will become a lot better than she is right now. Well, with that said, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these new reveals that we got today. What do you think of the new promos, as well as Ange herself? Do you think they're pretty good? Do you think they're kind of generic? Or you're happy with the fact that Bermuda Triangle now finally doesn't have a whoa card that's blowing everybody up, as so far Ange, in comparison to what we've seen so far, looks pretty fair, if we want to summarize it all in one word. And also, what's your opinion about the unrestriction list itself, with the fact that Angerblader, Dorian, as well as Shiriki all are now at 4 copies, or not now, next week once December the 1st rolls around for us in the English format? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. This video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I'll see you guys in the next one!